Welcome back to Rarest Photos. We have not finished this book yet. Lisa Marie Presley's From Here to the Great Unknown that her daughter helped her finish. It's a very emotional read, and I know some of y'all have probably read it all the way through and are kind of reading it with me. But for those of you that haven't read it, I apologize. I mean, sometimes it takes a while to get through these books. You can only talk so much before your voice gets kind of raw, and I had to kind of slow down some of my videos that I've been doing, at least the volume of them. But I'll be back soon when it comes to doing a higher volume of videos. But let's get to this. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for watching these videos. Thank you for the messages, checking in on me on my email and on the comments. Where do we leave off? We left off Michael Jackson had passed away. And then Riley was talking about her little brother Ben, how similar he was to Elvis, and how he didn't stand a chance, basically. So we'll start out there. Now this is Lisa talking. When I was about 7 years old, we moved to a new house a bit further north in Clearwater on Osceola Avenue. Our dock was on the ocean. Ben and I would jump off that dock into the mud when the tide was rolling out. Rolling our whole bodies in it, covering ourselves in its disgusting ocean ooze, playing with the seaweed and the dead fish and the shells. Some days we'd go find lizards, and we figured out that if you pushed on the belly of one, it would open its mouth, and when you let it go, it would snap shut. That's how Ben could wear them as earrings. Oh my gosh. You know... I didn't expect to read that. Very, very funny and kind of gross. So in our backyard, we had a pool. And at some point every day, my mom would yell from the house to get out when the thunder and lightning came. Though we'd always try to stay in the water. It was more fun when it was raining and when the sky lit up. See, that's an amazing mom. That's a mom that cares about her kids, that's concerned about her kids. I love hearing that. I'm the same way with my kids. You know, if there's a thunderstorm 10, 15 miles away, guess what? Time to get in the house. Stay away from the windows, all that stuff. Wear shoes that are rubber soled. My mother's favorite thing to do was to take us to the park by the lake to go on the swings. She liked going on the swings, not pushing us on them. Her two rules in Florida, which we'd hear often, was you can't swim in the rain, and if an alligator chases you, you have to run in zigzags. My mom would take us out into Clearwater Harbor on jet skis, doing donuts and throwing everyone off the back. It was the same energy she had at Grayson with the golf carts, just totally wild. She once threw her mom off the back. Yay! She threw Priscilla off the back. Love it. Sorry. I know y'all probably thought the same thing, most of y'all. Then freaked my grandmother out by pretending that there were sharks coming for her. Oh boy. See, this is the fun section of the book right now. Other times we'd head across the harbor to a tiny island covered in sand dollars. We'd collect them, bring them home, dry them out, and then crack the Aristotle's lantern open to find these little dove-like shapes, which were actually their teeth. Poor things. I still feel bad for the lizards and the sand dollars and my grandmother. We don't feel bad about that, most of us, at least. My mom would take me to the sandcastle to get frozen yogurt in a cone, just me and her. She would have the music blaring in her black Mercedes, always a black Mercedes. And we listened to Toad the Wet Sprocket, it was the 1990s at that point in time, and Tony Braxton and Mark Morrison's Return of the Mac. Though my mom loved all R&B. Now, my mom would always sing along in the car, but in a self-conscious way, as though she didn't want anyone to hear her. I didn't understand back then why she was so scared about music. Well, after the divorce from Michael, my mom started having panic attacks. That's why she took us out of LA and down to Florida to begin with. They were so severe that she was in and out of the hospital. Even in Florida, she had to put aluminum foil over the windows so the paparazzi couldn't take photos of her. So she had her gallbladder. She also had her gallbladder removed and the mercury taken out of her teeth. But nothing helped because it just wasn't physical. She was having some sort of mental breakdown. So, anxiety. I know a little bit about that in my family here. And that's something that they had suggested to my wife. Maybe we need to take your gallbladder out. I mean, uh, you have pains. You have all of these things that go on. And your brain is convinced that you're dying. Then it can happen once a day. It can happen 10 times a day. And there's no amount of reasoning, no amount of saying, you're fine, you're going to be fine. This is just, a panic attack. It's just anxiety. None of that stuff helps. I mean, it doesn't stop it. Let's just say that. You can think all you want, but when your brain is programmed, your old brain is programmed into fight or flight, either one. There is no, a lot of times there's no stopping it unless you get on some sort of form of medication, which, I mean, some people believe in some holistic medications and some believe in medications that are created. But it is a horrible thing. I've experienced it. I haven't had much in the way of panic attacks myself. I've had a couple I guess I probably did have a couple where it feels like a heart attack for about 5 minutes. But not a full-on panic attack. And my wife had severe PTSD from losing her life twice, or almost losing her life twice, and then the death of our son. So I can feel, I feel for Lisa on this. And the fact that she had her gallbladder taken out and mercury taken from her teeth. I mean, they're just trying to figure out anything. She was having a sort of mental breakdown, is what Riley says. Now, just as my mother used to pick up the phone to listen in on conversations between Elvis and Ginger Alden, I once unwittingly picked up the phone in Florida in time to hear my father, who had just seen a photo in the press of Michael Jackson, my mother, me, and Ben, say, "Get my son off that guy's effing lap." I quickly hung up the phone. Strangely, this was the first time I realized that my father was upset about my mom's marriage to Michael. That's how well they protected us from our adult problems. Despite his hurt, my father recognized that my mom needed help and flew to Florida to look after all of us. She told me that later, that was the last time that they had actually hooked up. My mom desperately wanted to get back together with my dad. We're still talking about, this is Riley still. She believed that she'd broken up her family and felt immense guilt, but my dad couldn't risk being that vulnerable again. At night, my dad and his friends would sit on the balcony of our house and play and sing while the tropical storms came through. One night, my mom and my dad and all of us sang "Leaving on a Jet Plane" together while the weather raged. Now, both my parents loved rain and hated the sun. They had chosen my brother's middle name, Storm, during Tropical Storm Earl. Who out there loves the rain and not the sun on this channel? I guess if you grow up in Southern California and all you have is sun, and of course I know because I grew up in Southern California till I moved to Tennessee when I was 21. But I still love the sun, and I don't really love the rain much. I'm not a big fan of that. Gets things wet, messy. Can't clean, can't do stuff outside. Can't play outside, can't golf, can't play tennis. The kids don't. If they go outside, they come in and ruin the whole house, right? Just curious, what percentage of you out there really love the rain versus sunshine? And then going back there, I know that there's quite a few of y'all that have anxiety in this channel. I'm not telling you what to do. I can just say that for the longest time, I've never really believed in medication. I believe more in the holistic stuff. And there are certain things that can help, for sure. But, my experience in my family is that it didn't help. And none of the holistic stuff, the therapy for years, didn't help. Sometimes it does take something, some sort of a blocker, to block those anxiety feelings and those panic attacks. So, if you're one of those folks that are fighting medications, sometimes you just have to find the right one. I'll tell you what I did. I went online and I looked at all of the different anti-anxiety medicines, and I read through, I'm not kidding, 1,000 reviews of each one. And I found the one that had the least side effects, the one that, from my wife, and she tried it, and it ended up changing the course of our lives in that sense. So, don't give up. It's a terrible thing. Anxiety is a terrible, terrible thing. Anxiety causes acid reflux. Big time. And of course, you can have your acid blockers and stuff, take that. It's not going to matter. Your anxiety keeps it going. So many things that anxiety does to your body. It's not a good thing. Stress is the number one killer in the United States, obviously. It's always been. And I just hope that y'all find a solution, or somebody in your family finds a solution. Nothing to be ashamed of if you have to go on some type of medication. Okay, let's continue reading a little bit. This is Lisa. I really had no prototype to follow growing up. I had no family life, no home life to be an example, ever. No stability. I didn't feel any emotional attachment to my grandparents, who seemed to be perfect, who did all the right things and made all the right moves, who got married and had kids and stayed married until they died. I guess I didn't really have a shot in heck. If something is not interesting to me anymore, I'm out of there. And whenever you get with a new person, the whole thing, the beginning, the middle, and the end, well, it'll play out in about 2 years. That's why I got married multiple times. Now, when I had Riley, I set my mind solely on having a child and raising a child. Was my goal for her to have a suitable parents who were stable? And were Danny and I going to stay married forever? No flipping away. Neither of us even had that in our minds, but we were a different kind of soulmate, and we always ended up living in the same house somehow. Kind of controversial. I've seen a lot of comments talk about this, how Danny is in Scientology still. A lot of people think, or let me just say some people think, that Danny was there to keep tabs on Lisa, to try to control her. Now, I don't think I've got that opinion. I'm just stating what I've seen in the comments. I don't know what y'all think about that. It might be worth having a conversation if you haven't even thought about it, or if you're completely adamantly against it. I certainly don't think Riley thinks anything negative about it, right? But I believe Riley's still in Scientology as well. As of now, right? Lisa got out. Priscilla didn't get out. Alright, so this is back to Riley. My parents began to record music in my mom's garage in Florida. These would become some of the songs on her very first record. Now, they would write during the day, and at night we'd all go out and get frozen yogurt or go to a movie theater to see something. My mom always got medium popcorn and red icy. That sounds fun, doesn't it? Movies are expensive, my goodness. Y'all know that, but you should go every once in a while, because it is fun. She was usually very protective of us, making sure that we didn't see anything too grown up. Now, I remember seeing Flubber at the local theater, but I also remember being dragged to see the Titanic. Now, she kept her hands over my eyes during the entire scene where, they were being adults, you know what I'm saying, in the car. So I was allowed to see the catastrophe of the sinking ship, but not these. She inherited the modesty from my grandmother. Some days she'd take us to the Dairy Curl in Clearwater to get chocolate-dipped ice cream cones. Now, while our parents were recording in the garage, Ben and I would ride our bikes around the front yard. Every afternoon, around 3, our neighbor would come out. And he'd be on his porch in his old Victorian house, sit on the chair facing the ocean, and he would play the fiddle. Me and my brother would climb on our kumquat tree so we could see over the high walls. And there we'd sit, eating kumquats, watching the man play. Now, once he finished, we'd climb back down and head out to the front yard and the ocean to search for manatees, but we never found any. Once my mom was fully recovered, we all moved back to California, back to the house we had left behind. Our house in Hidden Hills, about 30 miles west of downtown LA, would turn into our real childhood home. My father had found it for us, and we lived there until I was 21. It was a very special place, though it has since been torn down. I've got to stop real quick again. We've always heard that Danny lived a simple life, that he slept on the floor, I think, that he didn't really have money, I guess. But then I've also heard conflicting stories. I've heard that his family is founding members of Scientology or something. He's kind of royalty. What do y'all know about that? I mean, if y'all have some good, solid information, put it in the comments. I'm just kind of curious. Because it says here that my father found it for us. We lived there till I was 21. It was a very special place, though it has since been torn down. And there were not a lot of celebrities around that area back then. It was a horse community, and everybody had one. My mom liked that it was far away, and she liked that no celebrities lived there. We had 5 acres. There was a swing out front on a huge old oak tree, fruit tree groves in the back, the main house, another full-size house, and 2 guest houses. I lived in 5 acres growing up when I was a child, so I know the exact size of that. I remember going to see the house for the very first time when I laid eyes on the swing. When I laid eyes on the swing on the 600-year-old oak tree, I was sold. The main house at Hidden Hills also was called the Upper House, and it was rustic, with stone fireplaces and wood beams. Oh, that sounds so good. It reminds me of the smell of a real fireplace, because when I was singing, well, we had a fireplace at my house too growing up, but when I was singing in Pioneer Town, I was the house band from 1994-ish to 1996 when I left. Me and a couple of the other musicians lived in the band house, which was right behind the club, Pappy and Harriet's. And there was the smell of fireplace in Pioneer Town, every house had it. And even though it's in the desert and it's hot during the summertime, it gets cold at night. It just reminds me, that smell. Yeah, it just brings emotional feelings to me. Who had a real fireplace on this channel? Talk about that if you want. I mean, did you love it? Was it in the living room and you guys would sit around it? Ours was in the hallway at our house. It was in the hallway, which is kind of interesting. So we didn't have one in our living room like a lot of people do. The main house, was called the Upper House. It was rustic with stone fireplaces and wood beams. Snakes would get into the house sometimes, and at night we'd hear coyotes howling, great horned owls hooting. Sometimes I'd turn a bathtub faucet on and spiders would come out. We'd often find tarantulas in our backyard, and I would bring them to school in jars as my show and tell. My mom's assistant and her son lived with us. He was our godbrother, and he and Ben and I would just roam. We were crashing bikes and running off finding snakes and getting cuts and falling into rose bushes, running amok like my mom had done at Graceland. I think we were protected by angels because none of us ever had broken a bone, even when we fell off swings or crashed golf carts. Once my brother flipped his golf cart, and he had his off-roading tires on, and he decapitated the golf cart. Somehow, he was fine. Along with the horses and 7 dogs, we raised goats and chickens and peacocks. Ben and I would spend hours, sun up to sundown, playing in those orchards behind the house. We would imagine ourselves into worlds we created, constantly coming up with games and spending hours in the trees, playing make-believe. We would climb in the apple trees and the plum trees and the pomegranate trees. I love pomegranates. Until we cracked open a pomegranate and ate the soft insides. My brother's nanny, Aunt, would ring a bell at 4 o'clock for tea. Tea and crumpets and jam, like some British colonial version of her South African upbringing. My mom curated all of that for us. It was her version of Graceland. I think as parents, we try to give the positive things that we had as a child, and we try to give the things we didn't have. Sometimes we can overdo it. I think perhaps my wife and I have overdone it sometimes with our children. It's hard to know how much is too much, right? I mean, I grew up, I appreciate so much now, like, about everything. I get an appreciation for everything. Falling asleep in a comfortable bed at night is one thing. The day, the fact that the day has gone by, I'm going to sleep, you know, and it was another day of life. And I think that the new generation doesn't have that, or won't have that, unless they face adversity. And so I think sometimes, yeah, I'm guilty of maybe giving the kids too much, and maybe they don't have as much adversity. So I don't know. You know, it's a new generation as well. I won't know until later on. You just gotta love them, and hopefully that they find their way, right, and they find their struggles and they make it through their struggles. But I love the fact that Riley does talk about how her mom's trying to provide these things that were special to her for the kids, and she's also trying to protect them. The decade after Michael Jackson was her best time outside of the Tarzana days with my dad, when things were simple. She had so many friends who really loved her. Now we would joyously travel the world together as a pack of 25 people. Fun every day, all day. I'd wake up to find a whole bunch of people on the deck drinking coffee. It was like a dream-like communal life, and we were never alone. She was never alone. Because my mother had been a witness to Michael's life, we now had a private chef, 3 assistants, 10 security guards, agents, business managers, friends, so many people coming and going. At all times, all of the houses on the property were full. 3 of my friends moved in with me in the main house, and we even had my mom's holistic doctor living upstairs, plus the 2 nannies. So in all, about 17 people could be living there. And then there were people that would come by every day. She wrote a song called Thanks about those friends on her 2005 album, Now What? My mother had a Gaia-like quality, a mystical intuition. Sometimes it felt like Mother Nature lived through her. One morning, my mom and dad were sitting in the kitchen drinking coffee when 2 of her friends, Mike and Caroline, who she had set up and who were now married and lived with us in the upper house, had walked in. "You're pregnant," my mom said to Caroline. Mike and Caroline went white. Caroline was indeed pregnant, but only a few weeks, and they hadn't told anyone. I think that's a good spot to stop. Page 170 is where I'm at right now. Anyhow, thanks again. Thanks again for being patient with me. And at some point, I'm going to get back in the rhythm of doing this. Yeah, I've had some sicknesses here and there, some cold stuff, some sore throats. Just a lot of work. That's really been the thing. It's been a lot of work. Heck, one of my employees got bit by a couple of dogs yesterday. Not a good thing. Of course, I run a sales team. I think y'all know that, most of you. Got bit by a couple dogs, and you know, there's always a lot of that stuff. Anyways, stay safe. TCB, TLC. I know there's a lot of news going on in the Elvis world, and I don't always cover all that stuff, but you know, I did have just so y'all know, and I don't know if I'm maybe going to do a video about it. I've talked to her about it, but Bridget Cruz and I had a 3-hour conversation about 2 months ago. She shared a lot of stuff with me, and I know that there's another channel that's out there that's doing some stuff, and maybe Bridget and I will do some videos. But she shared a lot of stuff with me that really tells us that we're on the right track when we made these videos about Priscilla, for one thing. Not that I needed that affirmation, but excuse me. But we'll see. I just wanted to let you guys know that I, you know, I do follow up on a lot of Elvis news. I don't always cover it. I don't, you know, I mean, anyhow. Take care. TCB, TLC, and hopefully I get another video done today. And if maybe even a comment video, maybe read some more books. Maybe I'll go over to the Elvis and the Legends channel and read some of the Anne Margaret book, which we had started over there, and get some more on that channel. I've been doing a lot of building too, and some new sets. So I'll still probably do my rarest photos in here. But when you go to Elvis and Legends, you might see a preview of the new set that I'm either going to use for that channel or for a book club. I'm going to be reading a lot of books, a lot of Derry Matera books. I'm going to probably read some Stephen King books. I'm going to read some biographies on I bought Tom Jones, but I bought a couple books yesterday with the intention. Princess Diana, a book on her, and somebody else I forgot. But I have a lot of books. In fact, let me just do this here. I'll show you how many books I have. This is just a little small bit of them. And you got down here. A lot of books here, right? You know, so anyhow, TCB, TLC, till next time. This is Rare Elvis Photos. Lots of love to all of y'all. I know you see my records there. Got more records over here too. Lots of records, okay? Lots of records here. Boxes of records. And of course, what y'all see here in the back, these are all Elvis records. I just have this White Hot Soul here because I just had bought this the other day. Of course, more Elvis records, 45s. Some books here. Sorry about the mess. Some more records there. Records up top. Tons of 78s. These are actually from a collection of the Head of Dot Records. All of these. So a lot of these are promotional copies. Louis Armstrong stuff, Bing Crosby. Anyhow, just wanted to share. And there's a little dartboard where my wife beats me at darts about half the time. She's actually pretty dang good. We have little games of darts. All right. Hope you enjoyed the small little tour. TCP TLC. Again, this is Rare Elvis Photos.